Welcome to a new episode of Superpowered Fancast. This is Darren. One of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is because I get to speak with some of the people I consider the most creative in the entertainment industry. While actors embody characters and bring stories to life, and directors create a vision in which the story is ultimately told, writers are the ones who tell the story. They create the characters and the worlds that they inhabit. This week on the podcast, I got to speak with writer David Avallone. Avallone is a freelance writer who has worked across the entertainment industry in film and television, including the animated series Bat Wheels for Warner Brothers, and his own podcast series Pulp Today, which is available on Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. David is also the writer of the Elvira comics for Dynamite Entertainment, including the current Elvira and Monsterland series, which finds the Mistress of the Dark attempting to thwart Vlad the Impaler from building an army of movie monsters. The second issue was released last week, and I recommend picking it up because it is a fun read with great comedy, adventure, and thrills. I got to speak with David about comics, the pulp tradition, and more. So without further delay, here's my interview with David Avallone. Hey,
Hey, man. How are you?
I verified it's recording this time, so.
Yeah, no worries.
But I really appreciate you.
Oh, no problem, man. I get it. We have all been there. Like I said, watch any episode of the Writer's Block and just look for my eyes 5 minutes in going, because that's me checking the red number to see that it's turning over.
I will, definitely. Well, I guess we can just kind of drop right into it. I usually do intro.
Your mic is sounding a little low. Are you hearing that?
I don't.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay, I was probably talking about, so that's on me. So I guess just kind of jump into it.
Sure.
You have a tradition and a history, both yourself and your family, in the pulp tradition of writing. What elements of the pulp tradition do you bring to your work, and do you think how do you think those elements work?
Well, there's the dictionary definition of pulp is anything printed on cheap paper, but I think that the more colloquial understanding of it is referring to the magazine literature of the 1930s, particularly the genre literature of the 1930s through the 1950s. And what marks those stories more than anything else is they were produced on a assembly line. They had to come out. You guy who wrote The Shadow, Walter Gibson. I don't remember. Yeah, Walter Gibson. Then Maxwell Grant was the name they put on them. Same with Kenneth Robeson for Doc Savage was really Lester Dent. Those guys wrote like a 30,000 word novella every 2 weeks. That's hard. And the thing that they stuck to, and it's very much an ethos. My father grew up reading those stories and loving them, and sort of passed that along to me when I was a kid. The only thing you can't be writing pulp is boring.
Right.
Shit's got to move. Things have got to happen. Raymond Chandler, who is, by some considered a very fine writer and, capable of a great deal of literary quality, he once said that if you get stuck in a story, and he was talking about mysteries, of course, you just have a character no one has ever met before walk in the room with a gun, or you find a dead body. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter who the guy with the gun is, but if you hit a roadblock and you don't know what happens next, have someone completely new walk in the room and say, "Everybody, put your hands up," or the detective opens the door and there's someone lying on the floor with a knife in their back. Instant story, instant adventure, instant action. So I won't say that I fall into that formula, and I am not churning out, 30, 40,000 words a month. But I definitely inherited from my father the idea that the prime sin in anything, art, in any what I call the popular arts, is being boring.
Right.
And the thing is, there are people who think that you can't write about something that's boring without boring the audience. No, no, no. That is not true at all. You can convey boredom to an audience without making them want to kill themselves. That is not how it works. And I definitely, particularly in comics, I got 20 pages to tell a complete story. Now, it's a complete story that's part of a serialized thing, but I always want the story in and of itself to be satisfying, even though there's a cliffhanger, even though you got to come back next month and read another one. So what I think I get from the pulps is that sense of, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then that happens, and then that happens. And, I will absolutely stop and smell the roses and have a philosophical conversation, or stop, accommodate a good line of dialogue that I like. But all of that has to happen through action. If it's just two people sitting and talking and nothing else is happening at all, you've kind of failed, because it's especially, less so in a novel, but comics are a visual medium, movies, animation, the other stuff I do, visual mediums. And I wrote something once that was a cross-country romantic comedy, and I showed it to my movie never got made, but I showed it to the cameraman, a guy named Mark Morris, who was probably going to shoot it, director of photography, a very old good friend of mine. And he said it needs a scene where the character decides to go back. And I said, no, there is that scene. There's the scene where the car breaks down and he's sitting in a bar and he meets someone who's going the other way, and he decides that he's going to go with that guy, and then he changes his mind by the end of the scene. And he said, yeah, but I didn't see a guy going back the way he came. I saw a guy sitting in a bar. And I went, that is such an excellent point. And I changed the scene in the script to the car breaks down on the road. He hitches a ride into town to go find a mechanic. So the two of them are now in a car pointed in the wrong direction, the opposite direction the hero was going, having the conversation where the guy in the car is like, hey, man, you don't need to go to New York and see your old girlfriend. It's not going to work out. Come to I'm driving to California. Take the whole trip with me. It'll be great. That as a story point works so much better if the hero is in a car going in the opposite direction of New York City. The two guys in the bar, the dialogue's the same, but the audience isn't seeing someone who has changed their mind about going back the way they came.
Right. It's
in the car,
seeing something,
seeing it.
trying to infer.
Yeah. And so also I read an article once about exposition through action, and they used as an example The Empire Strikes Back. And they said there's all sorts of ways to tell the audience that Luke Skywalker is Darth Vader's son. But Lawrence Kasdan does it at the end of a long sword fight when Darth Vader has cut off his hand and he's hanging over a pit. That's when you get that information. That's when you blow their minds. If Obi-Wan Kenobi is sitting with him in the Mos Eisley Cantina and says, I should probably tell you at this point, guy on the Death Star torturing your sister is actually, it's got no power in that scene. But I read a very funny review of Empire Strikes Back the year it came out that literally broke down that last scene with that duel with Darth Vader as a Freudian nightmare, with all of the falling into holes and getting your right hand with your dick in it cut off and all, it was like, and then at the end of the nightmare, the boogeyman says, "Oh, I'm your father." That's, he wasn't wrong, by the way. That analysis is completely correct. It is a Freudian nightmare, but that's why it's great. That's why we're still talking about it 30 years later.
Right.
If it had been Like I said, if it had been Obi-Wan Kenobi taking Luke out for a cup of coffee and saying, "Hey, I have some really upsetting news to tell you," no one would give a shit. All of which to say, going back to answering your question, is like, yeah, the thing I learned from the pulps is keep it moving. And the first movie I ever truly loved was the 1933 King Kong, which is an express train.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't even say it's slow. It builds tension while they're on the boat going to Skull Island, but that's like 10 minutes.
Right.
They get to Skull Island, and then there is something scary, interesting, beautiful, haunting.
Right. There's always something
happening. Like it's this, and then this, and then this, and it always cracked me up that Peter Jackson said that the movie that influenced him the most was King Kong, and I'm like, dude, King Kong's 100 minutes long. You have learned nothing from King Kong. King Kong is the original movie. King Kong is over before we meet King Kong in your King Kong movie.
Right.
Like, don't, the Lord of the Rings, not known for their economy of storytelling, and look, you want to make a 3-hour long movie, great. But King Kong shouldn't be 3 hours long. Right. An Indiana Jones movie shouldn't be 3 hours long. Like, Endgame is 3 hours. Its Endgame is Charles Dickens. It's got 5,000 speaking characters. We've built to it. Endgame earned it.
Right.
Earn those 3 hours. Totally. But don't tell me you love King Kong, man. Like, that's Star Wars is a solid and righteous. The first one is a solid and righteous 2 hours before all of the special edition stuff in it. That's it. Yeah. That's a good length, man. That's what the bladder can stand, and if you can't keep it under 2 hours, I want intermissions back, but that's another story entirely.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I love big epics, but I think especially with a character, like if it's a movie, like I think it's kind of why I've liked I've liked some of the newer Kong and Godzilla movies a little bit better. Like I think that first newer Godzilla, I think they did a little too much of trying to the father son dynamic with Cranston but I think when they finally just decided it's just going to be monster versus monster, then that's when
and the father son dynamic, man. Movies are about things.
Yeah.
Monster movies are not about father son dynamics.
Yeah.
Godzilla movies are about the environment. They're about man testing nuclear weapons. They're about the limits of science to solve our problems. They're about a lot of things, metaphorically. Some in the late 80s, early 90s, Japanese Godzilla movies were about how much America sucks.
Yeah.
Valid. Totally valid. That's why when Roland Emmerich had Godzilla attack New York, I'm like, no, Godzilla is New York, man. Like, Godzilla is us. Godzilla doesn't attack us. He attacks Japan. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it's like Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner. War of the Worlds is about imperialism and colonialism and the shoe being on the other foot. Yeah. I don't give a shit about divorced dad Tom Cruise. Holy crap. That is H.G. Wells did not care about big divorced dad energy Tom Cruise. Like, that is not what it's not about parenting, for fuck's sake. Right. Don't take your movie about alien invasions and say, no, really, it's about parenting. No, it's not. It's about how, you're the big industrialized nation that conquers the world. What happens when something shows up bigger than you? What happens when Mars shows up and treats Britain like Africa? That's what the book's about, but Steven's got to turn it into a guy who doesn't visit his son enough on weekends. It's like, I don't think that's a story, man. So, and that's that's an important, other people I think express it slightly differently, but I always break it down to story and plot. Plot is the Martians invade. Story is, what are you trying to say about the world by telling a story about the Martians invade? What's the story? And sometimes you come up with plot first. Sometimes you come up with story first and you sort of back time that. A lot of times you just come up with an image you think would be cool. And one of the great, wonderful, mysterious things about writing is when you've got plot and you don't have story, and then you start writing the plot, you start writing the piece, and then you go, that's what I was writing about. That's what this story is about. I wrote Elvira going to hell in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can write a wacky comedy about a comedy character going to hell, but you kind of have to have an opinion about the idea that God operates a medieval torture chamber where the punishment is too much and it's too late. You can't redeem yourself. You're just going to be changed. Like, you got to have an opinion about that if you're writing about hell. So I found something to write about hell. I found a great quote from C.S. Lewis that I actually have someone say in the comic, which is, the gates of hell are locked from the inside.
Yeah.
And that's what I wrote about.
Yeah, I actually remember that because it had me thinking about like Neil Gaiman's Sandman and his kind of view on Lucifer and hell is like being hell, basically like they come here. I don't bring them here.
Right. Yeah, that was a great.
Yeah, and they torture themselves because they think they need to.
Yeah, it was built philosophically on that same C.S. Lewis thing, and how what you do then with Elvira and with the people that she encounters there. My favorite addition in the mythology of hell, I don't think anyone's ever done this before, was the observation that demons are stupid. I had her guide say, well, demons are dangerous, but you got to remember they're really stupid. And she says, why are demons stupid? And he says, okay, so demons are the 1000th generation removed from the angels who were so fucking stupid that when Lucifer said, I'm going to challenge God, they went, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
Right.
So, like, you take those dudes who thought rebelling against God was smart, and then they've been inbreeding underground for 1 trillion years. So you end up with the dumbest creatures in the universe. Like, yeah, they're vicious and they're horrible and they're violent, but they're easily outsmarted because these are the guys who thought rebelling against God was a bright idea. And I thought that was and honestly, one of the great things about storytelling, that was a solution to the storytelling problem of, I didn't want the whole story to be about how they avoided being captured by demons.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a good adventure movie premise, but I didn't think it was interesting enough to spend a lot of times with them dodging and weaving and fighting guys with pitchforks. I was like,
Yeah, especially
I had to come up with a reason they could easily get past demons when I really needed them to get past it. And when I sat down and thought about it, I was like, well, what are demons? Where do they come from? Oh, right, they're the angels that rebelled with Lucifer. Right, so they're dumb. So they were goofs 1 trillion years ago, and now these guys aren't as smart as the guys that thought rebelling against God was smart.
And I think honestly that works so much better in a comedic storyline, especially with a character like Elvira. So I mean, the fact that you have her as kind of the the audience's the reader's view of the world, like makes the comedy and the horror work so much better together. And the question I was going to ask is like, because you're currently working on Elvira in Monsterland, and I love the storyline. I love the storyline because I love Vlad the Impaler coming back and him going after other cinematic Draculas, which is fun to me. But what kind of connects you with Elvira as a character, and what about Elvira do you think the reader connects with?
Well, I think you always need, especially in something that's fantasy or science fiction or horror, you do need the character that's going to have the reaction that the audience would have. Hopefully their reaction is funnier, more interesting, whatever. But Elvira, to me, the genius of the character she created is that, and I've said this elsewhere, that the standard for that character, women that look like that in horror, Morticia Addams, Vampira, everyone Barbara Steele played in a Hammer movie. There's always sort of this like reserve and allure, and they have some foreign accent or another, and they're languid and they move slowly and they're very dignified. And Elvira looks exactly like those women, but has she always says it's a Valley Girl persona based on something that she was doing in Groundlings, because she was a sketch comedy actress in the Groundlings. But it's also, to me, Elvira has the personality of a nightclub comic.
Right.
She's Bob Hope in one of those, because they break the fourth wall in all those, On the Road to Morocco, On the Road to Mindanao. Like, there's a lot of like, when is Dorothy Lamour showing up in this picture kind of, jokes. And so that, and that goes back to, someone online was doing a thing where they were talking about, I think I saw this on Twitter. Someone was saying like, Lobo was doing all of the, Deadpool shit before Deadpool. And I was like, yeah, Groucho Marx was doing it before Bugs Bunny, who was doing it before Bob Hope, who was doing it before Elvira, who was doing it before Lobo, who was doing it before Deadpool. Like, get your history straight. It's like Batman, the Shadow was Batman before Batman, but Zorro was the Shadow before the Shadow, and the Scarlet Pimpernel was Zorro before Zorro. Like your Playboy, your masked Playboy crime fighter, not invented by Bruce Wayne, not invented by Lamont Cranston. So it's that Groucho Marx thing, and it's also the anarchic Groucho Marx being a constant outsider and being a constant threat to authority.
Right.
Philip Roth wrote a great essay about the Marx Brothers, where he brilliantly compared the three Marx Brothers to the Jewish immigrant experience. That Harpo is the one who's so fresh off the boat he doesn't speak the language, so he's silent. Chico speaks it with an incredibly strong accent, and they both have the most menial blue-collar jobs. And Groucho has moved into polite white Protestant society, but he has a professional job. He's a college professor. He's a lawyer, but he's still viewed with great suspicion by the wealthy white folks and by high society. And Bugs Bunny is very much influenced by Groucho Marx. So that thing of the Jewish nightclub comic, the Jewish sketch comic, that's very much in the Elvira tradition. It's just you're used to that person looking like Groucho Marx or Bob Hope, not being a big, busty, gorgeous showgirl.
Right.
So it's putting that, and she was a showgirl in Vegas, and that's the genius. Is in a burlesque show, you've got the MC and the stand-up comic, and you've got the showgirls. And the genius is, and this goes back to her Vegas days, she did comedy as a showgirl in Vegas. Like, they started to write comedy bits for her because she was funny and she could speak. So the Elvira persona is the showgirl who is also the stand-up comic.
Right.
And that's what I'm writing. The showgirl who is a sharp-witted, but also as much of an outsider. And, showgirls are essentially treated like sex workers. It is a shameful profession to many people.
Right.
So it's that thing of a person being outside of society, having sympathy for society's outsiders, and shaking the system and standing up against the man.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I kind of always connected with her as a kid, because she was so different than what you were expecting from the way she looks. And, and she acknowledged like why you were looking, but she gave you more looking at.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's never any pretense that she's not a hot chick. Like, that she knows that's part of the arsenal of weapons, for want of a better word, that she brings to the table. And but it's funny, like, I literally, because of writing her, like I don't even I'm not saying I don't see how beautiful she is and how sexy all the drawings are. It's like, but she's so not a figure that's about sex in the comics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The sex appeal is very incidental. Every once in a while, we'll make an obvious joke about it. We'll have a character staring at her. You know, there's a big influence in the comics on Mad Magazine. And in Mad Magazine, especially like the parodies drawn by Dick DePartolo, by Mort Drucker, you get like little background gags. And I try to do, sometimes the artists come up with them. Sylvia Califano came up with a number of amazing jokes in the background of Elvira in Horrorland. But like in the second issue, she meets Edgar Allan Poe, and she and Edgar Allan Poe are walking out of a graveyard together. And I said to Dave Acosta, I'd really like a Mort Drucker style background where there's a 1838 husband and wife walking down the street, and in panel 1 he's staring at her and she's looking at her husband, and in panel 2 Poe and Elvira have passed by and the wife is just beating the husband over the head with an umbrella. It has nothing to do with the plot. I said I want a little Mad Magazine moment of like, and also from a storytelling perspective, you have to acknowledge that it's 1838 and she's walking down the street in a slit to her navel 1960s looking cocktail dress. Right. So like people are gonna stare and you got to have that joke. Another favorite one of mine in the conversation about why demons are dumb in issue 6 or 7 of Masters of the Dark took place in a level of hell that looked like a shopping mall.
Right.
And there was a fountain of fire instead of a water fountain in the middle of the shopping mall. And I told Dave Acosta again, while they're having this conversation, I want 3 panels in the background. One where because it's a mall setting, the demons there are dressed as mall security guards with like dumb rent-a-cop uniforms on. And I said, panel 1, I want one of the demons flicking fire at the second demon. Then panel 2, I want the second demon flicking fire back at the other guy. And panel 3, I want them both on fire laughing their heads off. And it's just like, this demonstration of that they're idiots, that they're absolutely clowns setting themselves on fire for laughs, putting themselves through unspeakable pain because it's funny. I love that stuff. I've talked about it before, but in Horrorland, I did not write these at all. In the Alien issue, there's a panel that was just described as, Elvira is addressing medium on Elvira. She's talking to the crew of the Nostromo, telling them how they're all going to die. And in the background, Sylvia drew a Pac-Man board with little heads of Tom Skerritt and Yaphet Kotto. And the Pac-Man is, of course, the alien chasing them around. And in that little pen where the dead are, there's like a John Hurt drawing with his eyes X'd out and a Harry Dean Stanton with his eyes X'd out. And in the Psycho issue, there's a panel where she's talking to Norman Bates and she's muttering under her breath about the showers. And Sylvia found the sheet music from Bernard Herrmann's musical cue, the Murder. Right. And she put it in the background behind Elvira. She was very good on, finding jokes to add to just like close-ups. And the first time I didn't catch it in the pencils when it came in, and I look at every step of the art just so that I can make sure the storytelling is there. I'm not trying to double check the artist. I just really want to make sure everything is getting expressed. And when I first got that in the pencils, I couldn't really see what she was doing in the background. And when I got the inks, I just kind of looked like, why is there a musical staff behind her? And then I noticed that it was a single high note over the clef, over the staff, over the same note over and over again. I want to like, well, okay, I know what that's got to be. So funny. But yeah, so that, and that's the dream is to get collaborators who make better jokes than you would have, you know.
And along those lines, like, do you have any? I mean, I know you're working on Elvira and Monsterland now, but are you already kind of seeding the next Elvira?
We've just reached down the point. I'm about to write Monsterland number 5. I'm starting to see the art on 4. 2 comes out June, I don't know, middle of June sometime.
Right.
Trying to look at my calendar to see what, I don't know, maybe the 14th or the 21st. I can't remember which one of those. Monsterland 2 drops. 3 is all done. I've seen it, looks great. 4, the art's starting to come in, looks amazing. Just starting to figure out what I'm writing in number 5. Sometimes I do a little bit of I write myself into corners so that I can see how I'm going to write myself out of them.
Right.
I don't really know what happens in 5. Like, I wrote 4 and went, wow, put her in a tight spot. I wonder how we're going to get out of this. And I seeded things so that there's some idea. But I've now done 2 series in a row about the multiverse of movies. So I'll probably leave that alone next time.
Okay.
And I might go for something that's more of a sustained parody of a single movie or a single genre or but I honestly haven't. It's literally, I have it on my to-do list to discuss with Nikki and with Cassandra and with Joe Ryban, the executive editor at Nikki's, the publisher of Dynamite, what we're going to do next with Elvira. There is a original graphic novel, Elvira, that I've been working on for over a year. That's 120 pages, and 7. It's funny to say this. 69 of those pages have been drawn. And a lot of the rest of it is laid out, and I'm still trying to get that finished. I don't know if we will lay off on the next Elvira series. We might just concentrate on getting the graphic novel done and getting that out so that there's not a little too much Elvira out there. And I've got some pitches with Dynamite accepted a Red Sonja pitch from me like a year and a half ago. And we just haven't gotten around to doing the series, and it's a lot of fun. So that's another thing. But as far as Elvira goes, I have a pile of like 1 paragraph concepts for other Elvira series to go back to. But I may come up with something new. And it's like the Vincent Price thing is a perfect, that came out of nowhere. They were like, so we got the license to use Vincent Price. We'd like to do Elvira meets Vincent Price. I have always been trying to sell DC Comics on the idea of Elvira meets Swamp Thing. I think that would sell 1 trillion copies and be the funniest fucking thing in the world. I mostly want to do it so that she can call John Constantine Sting every time she sees him. Because I'm from the 80s and I remember that Bissett and Toddleben drew Sting when they'd like a really obvious photo reference of Sting every time John Constantine came up. So I think, I don't care how old he is. John Constantine should be played by Sting in a DC Comics movie. John Constantine can be a handsome old man. I don't give a shit. He doesn't have to be 35 to be John Constantine. That's unnecessary. So, but yeah, I would love, and it would totally be my tribute to Vertigo, to 80s DC Comics. It just would have Elvira in it. But yeah, I've got some stuff there, and I've got stuff coming out from other companies, and I've been doing more prose writing these days, which is really fun stuff. There's a Kickstarter going on, and if you put this out within the next 3 weeks, it'll still be going on. Okay. If you go to Kickstarter, there's something called Dead Detective Society, and I wrote a 7,000-word short story for that about an old public domain character named Nick Carter, who my father rebooted in 1964, and I am rebooting him yet again in 2023. Okay. Though the story takes place in 1964. Basically, Nick Carter was a 19th century character. Predates Sherlock Holmes, the first American action hero character, and ran forever. The pulp magazines kind of died out in the 50s, and in 1964 they asked my father to reboot him as a James Bond pastiche. And I was asked to do this anthology about dead detectives, and I didn't really have anything lying around for it. And then I went, wait, how is the guy in 1964 the same guy from 1890? That could be a thing where some supernatural undead thing is going. So basically, zombie James Bond is the premise, and it's called Nick Carter Recalled to Life, and it's a lot. It's my entry into writing a mid-60s swinging secret agent with a macabre horror element to it. So it's fun.
Well, it sounds awesome, and I'm definitely going to put the Kickstarter information up because I would love to read that myself. Just to kind of wrap up, and again, thank you for
oh, my pleasure.
I've seen a lot of your posts on Instagram about the strike. I would encourage you to out more about it. But if you wanted people to follow you on social media, where would you?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is I have a website, davidavallonefreelance.com, that branches to everything. I have the biggest of all of the places on the internet you can find me. I have the biggest following on Twitter, and I'm pretty active there, but it's also a little bit of a garbage fire over there on Twitter. So feel free to follow me on Instagram. I kind of make sure that everything that I've got going on is talked about at least a little bit on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. If anybody's on Blue Sky, I'm on, what's that other one called? Spoutable. We're seeing which gladiator wins that combat. But it's tricky.
Myself, so I know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah, I got 11,300 followers on Twitter, and it's hard to walk away from that for the 300 followers on Blue Sky and the 1,000 followers on Spoutable. And I feel like I don't have that many followers on Instagram. Oh, and I will say this: if you have Elvira comics or my comics or both, currently we're doing a CGC signing, and you have until June 30th to send those comics to CGC. Go to their website and look up the steps, and they will grade it, slab it, and they'll grade it, send it to me and Cassandra to sign, encase it in carbonite, and send it back to you for your collection. And I would love it if you sign up for that, because right now I feel like I'm throwing a party and I haven't seen the RSVP list yet. So I hope someone shows up to the party.
Well, add that link as well.
But that's a new wrinkle for me. And I also just started a Whatnot, and I'm probably having my first sale show there in August sometime.
Okay.
So keeping, it's exhausting, but I don't mind it. In the old days, you would kind of hope your publisher would do PR for you, and they wouldn't, and you'd be very sad.
Right.
So at least in the 21st century, there are avenues. Like 20 years ago, there would have been no way for me to personally reach 11,000 fans. Right. No, like there would have been no way, like literally no way. So the fact that I can have at least that tiny little megaphone, and you grow it as best you can. But yeah, so follow me on the things, and I will try to reward you with funny, pithy things and anecdotes, and not too many pictures of what I'm eating.
I got it. David Avallone, thank you again for being a superpower.
Thank you, Darren. Great to see you.
Thank you. I would love to speak to you again sometime.
Anytime, man. Just reach out.
All right, absolutely, I will. Thank you again. Once again, I want to thank David Avallone for being on the podcast this week. You can pick up the first 2 issues of Elvira and Monsterland from Dynamite Entertainment now. David's web series and podcast, Pulp Today, is available on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Bat Wheels is currently airing on Cartoon Network and Max. If you want to follow David Avallone and his career, the best place you can find him is at his website, davidavallonefreelance.com. You can also find him on social media at @davallone on Twitter, as well as at David _Avallone _freelance on Instagram. You can find me on the web at superpoweredfancast.com. You can email me at superpoweredfancast@gmail.com. You can find me on social media on Twitter at superpoweredfan or on Instagram at superpoweredfan as well. So for this week on Superpowered Fancast, this is Darren signing off.